You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Well, folks, now that those pesky hockey games are actually out of the way, we can begin the real NHL season. I am, of course, referring to the NHL offseason. Should be a very active one. And joining me today in Toronto Sports Rush is Dennis Bernstein of the Fourth Period and, of course, Sirius XM NHL. Dennis, good morning, good afternoon, good day. How are you?
Doing great. It's the silly season, Kyle. Yes.
It is. It is the silly season. It's the season of... Yeah, it's a season of speculation, and this is really what we live for. But before we get into too much of the offseason, it would be foolish of us to not discuss what the Florida Panthers just did winning back-to-back. And arguably, from most angles, they look better doing it this year than last, didn't they?
Yeah, the depth was amazing, right? And Kyle, I think it starts at the top. It's culture. You know, and that word is overused and it's hard to define. But when you see this team play, and I keep going back to a guy like Brad Marchand, right, who's going to be a Hall of Famer without question. When a player like that is traded to a new team, what's usually the ask? Well, I want to play with Barkov and Reinhart or Barkov and Verhaeghe. And they told this guy, well, no, you know what? You might be better on the third line with Luostarinen and Lundell. They put him in there, and arguably he could have won the Conn Smythe. He had an amazing Cup final because of what Billy Zito's done there and the way Paul Maurice manages a group of men. It's a testament to, yes, you need talent, without question. Are they the most talented team in the league? I don't think so. But they're the best team, clear-cut, and it was clear-cut in this one this year. And you're right, Carl, I think this is a better team than last year. The depth is better. Bob has been great, and it's not hyperbole to say this is a dynasty, and they could win again next season. So they've done a great job because guys are willing to accept roles, and you have to do that in a championship team, and they did it. Those last two games, look, I know it was close, first four games, Kyle, but game 5 and 6, the decisiveness of their wins, you can't argue that this is the best team, and the way it's been constructed, and I'm tired of this narrative about state taxes, right? Like, you know how many trades that Bill Zito made? He traded for Tkachuk. He traded for Reinhart. He traded for, he got Forsling on waivers. He signed Carter Verhaeghe, first contract for $1 million a year. He traded for Marchand and retained salary. He traded Seth Jones, who fit in perfectly. Like, this is how you build organizations. Yeah, you can play in free agency, Kyle, you can draft well, but you got to make trades, man. There's just too many players on the team. So it's a testament to what this organization's done. And I remember, Kyle, and I talked to Steve Goldstein, the great play-by-play guy on Scripps. I said to him, I was at a party with him after they won. I said, Steve, if I told you 10 years ago, tonight, I'd be talking to you and you'd be smoking a cigar over your second Cup win, what would you say? He said, you would be day drinking or something. So from where this team came and the organization came to the point today, it shows you how you build championships in the NHL.
That was an absolutely fantastic summary of what is essentially the blueprint of this team. And you started with Marchand, and I mean, we won't get into it right now. That has to be one of the all-time shrewdest late-season acquisitions because of look at what they got him. He was in the Conn Smythe Trophy debate. Yeah. Like, he truly was. Turned back the clock in so many ways. So now if we look at their playoff run, they absolutely dusted Tampa in 5, went 7 with the Leafs, and on only 2 of those games did the Leafs look very poor. 5 and 7, which will go down in infamy. They absolutely dusted Carolina, and they handled Edmonton pretty easily, also making them look terrible in 2 of those defeats that they suffered. So, the Leafs season ends. It's all this talk about blowing up the nucleus, blowing up the core 4. We have to rebuild. We have to do this. And now in the hindsight we have of the last 2 rounds of the playoffs, the Leafs are a top 4 NHL team right now. So you now started the process of chasing Marner out of town, where the conversation may now be, we're going to lose this guy. What do we do to replace him? Is that fair?
Yeah, you're going to have to replace him. He's not staying. Right? I get it. I understand it. And here's the thing. Like, now Tavares is a key. You're going to lose Mitch, a 100-point player, and JT, who had a great season at 35 goals. Like, how do you replace that? Scott Laughton's not a 2C. He proved it in the playoffs, right? So now what do you do? Here's the thing. How do you redeploy that money? Like, how do you do it? And the problem is the free agent market isn't robust. There's not another 100-point player. There's not a 35-goal scorer. Look, I get it. They tried to get Rantanen. That was a smart move. The question is, how do you now, with the cap space that you have, go get better players? Or maybe not even better players, Kyle, but players that win you a championship, players that pay the price in a game 7, like better game 7 players. I don't see. I think Tree's going to have to do it via trade, Kyle, because I don't think you can go into the free agent market and do that. So you have to get gamers, and that's really hard to do because Sam Bennett's not leaving Florida. Why would you?
No.
Right? Like, why would you leave a perfect setting like that you're in right now? So yeah, there's a lot of question marks because here's the thing: a lot of offense potentially could be leaving Toronto, and maybe it's not all about offense, Kyle. Maybe it isn't. Maybe. Look, and here's the thing: all the defensemen are signed through next season. Like, so if you're going to improve the defense, what I only think you need to do, you'd have to make a trade. Your goaltenders are set, right? Look, and I mentioned Sam Bennett again. If not for that knee, maybe it's a different story, right? So the question is, what happens up front, Kyle? What does that top 9 look like next season? And will it be good enough to get by, and not just Florida, but a Tampa or Carolina, if Mitch goes to Carolina. So the big questions in Toronto is, what does that top 9 look like when we get to the fall?
Yeah, and let's take a quick look at the numbers. And quickly, I'll touch on the draft. With the Leafs, they're doing nothing in the draft this year. They're picking 64th and I think 86th. I mean, they can add pieces, but it's not going to really do much for them next season. Okay. So let's look. They're apparently going to have about $27 million in cap space, and as far as restricted free agents goes, they've got Nyes, Holmberg, and Robertson. I assume they would like to retain all 3 of those guys' services. Marner's gone. Like, I'm speaking out of turn here, but like, who thinks at this point he's staying? What level of psychological repair to a relationship would have to happen? It's not going to happen, so he's gone. Tavares is the question mark. Would you re-sign him?
Absolutely.
Depends on the...
Yeah.
At any price or a reasonable, like, what are you thinking?
Like, he's not getting the contract that he got, right? I don't know, 35 goals scored, $7 million. It's a plus 35 contract, 2 years, 3 years, but bring him back. Like, he earned that contract. He was great,
he did.
And he did the right thing. And he's a low key guy. He can handle the market. That's the other thing, Kyle. Nobody really brings up. He can handle Toronto. He can handle the media. He can handle the market. He performed, right? So yeah, that's the key now. Because I agree with you. I don't see like. If Mitch was coming back, Carl, he would have came back already. It would have been done. Like, we're June 19th, July 1st. No, come on. And to get the currency from the media and the fans to say, oh, no, Mitch is staying, it would have happened already. So I think JT is a real key here, because if that's not the case, then you go out and get to find another top 6 winger, and to be frank, a 2C. Because as I mentioned, Scott Lund's not a 2C. That's a lot of heavy lifting in one season to do when you have to go to the trade market and find those players.
And you're talking about Marchand going down to Florida and just fitting into that third line, accepting that role. One of the reasons I'd like to see them re-sign Tavares is how well he handled that captaincy transition. He was absolutely a professional, navigating the Toronto media to make that as small of a story as he possibly could, because he knows that's the way through in Toronto. I think that alone, it proves he's the type of guy they need in the locker room, but he's not the only piece they need to get in the offseason. So back to Marner. In hindsight, I mean, the talk has already started, but how bad of management was it for them to get nothing for this guy?
I don't know. I go back and forth on that, right? Yeah. Look, if you could have gotten Rantanen, sure, of course.
Yeah.
That's the one trade, though. Other than that, to get pieces, you can't. Look, this team's going for it. You said they're a top 4 team. You can't trade it with this guy at deadline for futures. It would have to be for comparable talent. They couldn't get it done. So you ride and die with them, and they played a horrible Game 7 and Game 5 at home. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's...
Right? Like who's that player, like that galvanizing player like Marchand? And now I know there's been some talk about Brad coming to Toronto maybe, because I don't think he's staying in Florida, but he's 37 years old, and he's going to do that act again? I don't know. Like, and you would sign that player for game 83, right? The first 82 doesn't matter. Like, what kind of gamer? And that's the thing about the Panthers. They got gamers. Like, you need a guy in a Game 7 who's going to score a big goal. You need Sam Reinhart, who scored 4 goals in a championship game. You need that type of player, and it's not coming in free agency. It's got to come through the trade market. And you're right about Nyes. Maybe Nyes is the kid. Maybe give him the money, overpay him, like make him happy. Well, have him want to stay here. So $7-8 million on long term, absolutely. Maybe that's the guy. But you're going to have to find. Here's the thing: you got to find winning players. Like, everybody's talented. The most talented team came in second because they didn't have enough gamers underneath Connor and Leon. So that Tree has to do it, and that's when you talk about chemistry, Kyle, fitting in the room, and stepping up and having leadership. And I'll give you the opposite of leadership. Evander Kane got thrown out of that game for a misconduct for a stupid play. And he didn't come back out to shake hands with his teammates. Like, that's not the type of guy you want on that team. You have to find these guys who want to win championships and will do anything to do it, Kyle. That's, for me, that's the key. So you could talk about fancy stats and assists and goals. Like, what's going to happen when you're down a goal and 5 minutes left in a game 7? Who's going to step up? That's the type of players that the Leafs need, and they have to identify those players. Bill Zito did it. Can Tree do it? We'll see what happens in the offseason.
Yeah, it's a very interesting and compelling time in Toronto because, you saw it that you just saw the same sort of setup in Edmonton. Edmonton and Toronto have very interesting rosters comparably with the superstar setup. Well, those superstars often get shut down in the playoffs. Like, you can't always just wait for Austin Matthews to score that big goal with 5 minutes left in the third period because he's probably not going to have the space or room to do it. He may be able to facilitate it, but he's probably not going to put it in the back of the net. And as you say, it's these other gamer-type guys, the Marchand type of guys that keep stepping up over and over that they need in the locker room. The guys that get angry when they lose in the press conferences, and we've heard that talk a lot this season too. I don't know where you find them, but if you're playing with the Leafs cap space, would you potentially save some of that for in-season moves? Because they've run into trouble with this before where they're maxed out and their hands are a little bit tied as to what they can do before deadlines.
Yeah, hey, Kyle, the flip side of that is, maybe you don't need a core 4. Maybe you need a core 3. Yeah. And underneath, 3 better guys. Maybe you do that way. So could you hold back? Yeah. Look, here's the thing. Don't waste the money, Kyle. Don't spend it because you just have it. Like, that's bad shopping. Right? Yeah. You can't identify the guys. Like, the team's talented enough to win, even without Marner, I think. Like, if they play better defensively, they get the goaltending. Look, we talk about culture. The culture changed with Chief. It did, okay? Get some more Chief guys. And maybe they won't knock your socks off or be a big splash, but the middle 6 guys, that's probably where you win a championship if you're Toronto. I think there's enough guys at the top of the food chain. Like, assuming Austin comes back and is healthy, fine. Like, Willie is great. Right, I like that defense. The Brandon Carlo trade, I love. That was a perfect. I'll tell you this, Kyle. If the Edmonton Oilers traded for Brandon Carlo, they might have won the cup because the guys they had, Klingberg and Stetcher, that was going to win a championship. So yeah, don't be crazy with your spending just because you have the money to spend it. So if you give Nyes his contract and you find one solid guy via trade or free agent, fine, and you've got another $5 or $7 million left over, that's not a bad thing to go into the season too. So if the Leafs don't spend to the cap, the fans shouldn't be that concerned because the quality may not be there, and you could save it for a non-contending team has a player that you might identify to win a championship. You might go get that player in February or March of next season.
Yeah, and it's fair to discuss Bennett and Marchand in this context. Like, I think obviously they would both be incredible additions to Toronto, but as you say, I just can't picture Bennett leaving Florida. Why would you? Forget the state tax argument. Just the setup is so good. He's part of a dynasty. He's going to be paid well long term, and it's a lifestyle that he's commented on this specifically, that he likes the lifestyle of living in Florida. Why would you leave? Yeah. So Marchand, of course, is, after his run, they may be interested in running this team back one more time. I'm sure they can get him at a fair price. Sure. But if you could add someone like that to the Leafs, just he's one of the ones that commented strongly on the Toronto media and the pressures the players face there. Do you think he could picture himself in a role where he could help shield the younger guys from that type? Because he's seen it all. He's done it all. He's won in 2 different spots now and been a key player in both those wins.
I think you want to talk about Brad in Toronto. Here's the argument. He did the job in Florida. He's not connected to that team. There's no legacy there. He came in. He was a mercenary. He helped them win. He played fabulously well. Right. So there's no real tie to that. Right. He doesn't own a house in Florida. He doesn't live by the beach. He was in Boston for 17, 18 years. So I think I think he wants to get paid. Like, at 37, if you can go at $7-8 million at 37 years old, that's a win. So would he fit in Toronto? He'd fit on 32 teams. He's a winner. Yeah. He's a Hall of Famer. Where wouldn't he fit? Right. So and Brett could handle it. And, he would have some nice sparring days as a member of the Leafs wearing the blue and white. So I don't think it would be a barrier for him to come here. I don't think that particular player would say, I can't handle that. He can handle everything, Kyle. He can. Yeah. So that would not be a barrier. Where I think it happened, I don't know. But certainly, I think that, and not for nothing, I want to say something. I spent a lot of time in Toronto and Montreal and stuff like that. If I was a player, Kyle, I'd want to play in those cities. I love those cities. I love the passion. Edmonton, it's not, Edmonton's not Toronto, Montreal. I went out after games because, fourth period, we like to go out and have fun. Right? Went to a bar after game 5. Usually in LA, maybe 1 or 2 guys were in a jersey. 80% of the kids in that bar were wearing jerseys. That's where I want to play, where the passion is. So I get that some guys don't want the intensity of the media, but I want to be in a place where people care about hockey. They're intense about it. They want to win. And the problem with, Toronto is that, the people in the arena on the lower level, in the gold seats, it's not that passionate. But I think to have that general out about players don't want to play in a market like Toronto, I think that's overstated. I really do. Right? So, we'll see. But Marchand could handle it. I don't think that would be the reason why, if he was going to go to free agency and not stay in Florida, that he wouldn't sign with the Leafs.
Yeah, and that's fair. I agree with you on the overstating thing. Even though we do harp on the market in Toronto a lot on these shows on TSR, it is somewhat acknowledged that it does tend to affect younger players who spend more time on social media, who do things like that, who are just not as used to managing the distractions that come with all of this, which is almost why do you find a guy like a Marchand? Do you grease him pretty good, pay him really well just to act as that barrier? And if it's not Marchand, is there anyone else in the league with rings on their finger, with that experience, with the grit that they need? Like, you just watch what Corey Perry did in Edmonton at 40 years old. What a key component he was of a playoff run. And these guys tend to show up in the playoffs at a level far beyond what they do in the regular season, and the players the Leafs have right now tend to perform in the opposite direction. So, you'd know better than I. How do you identify that 1 or 2, maybe 3 missing pieces, not high salary guys that can help them get it done? What are they looking for?
They're looking for, they're trying to unearth like a Carter Verhaeghe, right?
Yeah.
Who won, he's won 3 cups, Kyle. He won 1 in Tampa and 2. That's the type of guy you have to unearth. And you might find him in Columbus, or you might find him in San Jose, or a non-contending, or maybe somebody in I go back to Sam Bennett. The Calgary Flames didn't know where to play Sam Bennett, either wing or left or center. They didn't know. He came to Florida 2C, bang over, right? So I think this is where, here's the key, Kyle. We talk about salary caps. There's no salary cap on management and scouts. You need to lean into your pro scouting. That's what you need to do. You need the guys that talk to everybody, that talk to coaches, that call players, and identify those players. That's how you identify them. Like, Bill Zito might be a genius, but I will tell you this. His pro scouting staff tell him, go get these guys. Like, these guys will work, right? So I think that's how you do it. You lean into your pro scouting, and you identify players that, like, okay, maybe they won't score you 20 goals or 17 goals or 15 goals, but they'll score you 15 goals in the playoffs. Sam Bennett, 15 goals. Are you kidding? Really? 15. They had 15 wins. He had 15 goals. That guy? Come on. So I think it's a lot about pro scouting and how do you identify those players, those winning players. Kyle, I'll tell you this. It's not easy. It's not say, okay, there's 3 players that 1, 2, 3. Okay, if we get these 3 guys, we're going to win a championship. And Perry's an ageless wonder. 40 years old, still doing. The first 2-3 games, he played 20 minutes a night in the Stanley Cup final at 40. And Marchand doing his thing. They're rare birds. That's the problem. There aren't 10 of those guys. You can't say, if you miss on these 3 guys, our 4th guy can come in and score a big goal in game 6. It doesn't happen like that. But again, pro scouting tells you that. And again, it's about the off-ice stuff. It's about character. Right? It's about being able to fit in a room. It's all those different things. I saw it in LA. When LA won, look, Kopitar was great and Dowdy. They had, Dwight King was a second-line center, a second-line winger on that team. That's what you need to do. And again, I think you do that through pro scouting.
Yeah, and so you know better than I. How are the Leafs set up in that department? What are their long-term prospects of scouting? Is that one of their more, well-invested departments of their operation?
I don't think the results say it is, right? So maybe,
and that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I think the results say that look, the choice was made to trade for Scott Laughton, and he didn't really produce in the playoffs, and that's pro scouting. That's not a draft pick. So yeah, maybe they could do a little bit of work on that. It's just difficult because I saw Lawton play in Philly a lot, and I think, okay, that's the type of guy the Leafs need. He didn't produce. Right. It happens. Maybe he produces this year. Not writing him off. There's 1 year left on his contract, but I think they're set up good enough because look, Carl, they're close. That's the frustrating thing. They are close, and I know Leafs go back and say, you know what? When you look at it, the team that pushed the Florida Panthers the hardest were the Leafs.
That's why they're the third or fourth best team in the NHL right now. They push them harder than anyone else that played them.
And you can't blow up the team, Kyle. You can't blow up the team.
You can't blow up the team. And let's not forget how close they were to going up.
Yeah.
No. They were super close to going up 3-0 in that Florida series,
Absolutely.
too. They were up 3-1 in Game 3. And it's, okay, so maybe it's the character of the team that's lacking that prevented them from going up 3-0. Mm-hmm. But it's not time for an implosion. And what we speak of now with scouting and whatnot, that is protecting for the future as well. For next season to identify the pieces they need to bring in, because it's clear they're missing pieces.
Yeah.
Now, whether they bring them in the offseason or towards the trade deadline, that's the great mystery in all of this. And that's why the NHL offseason has become one of the most exciting league-wide, because we're talking in Toronto Sports Rush right now, but this is a league-wide thing where everyone's chasing this Florida Panthers team.
It's a copycat league. It always is.
Yeah.
Right? I remember when the Kings won. When the Kings won in 12, meet a big, heavy team. Kyle, imagine a big, heavy team now. And Florida isn't that. They're Here's the other thing, Kyle. It's about style of play. Okay? So you can't necessarily copy the players. You can copy how they play. Like, you know what really decided this series for me? It wasn't, it kind of was the goaltending. The aggressiveness of the Florida Panthers. 2 guys in on the forecheck, relentless pressure. Because guess what? Did you see the pass that? Oh, it's actually 2 passes on first Reinhart goal that Bouchard and Ekholm threw. Yeah. Pressure, style. And I'll go back to what doesn't work. I'm in Los Angeles, Kyle. Did you see the way the Kings set back in games 3 and 4 with a lead and try to protect it? You can't do that.
Gave them too much space.
Did you see the Florida Panthers up 3-0 sit back and lose that game in overtime in Game 4?
Never.
It could have been a 5-game series. It could have been a 5-game series. So I think it's also stylistically. If you can't replicate the players, Kyle, try to replicate the style, which is aggressiveness, which is toughness, which is hitting a little guy after it. So look, I love that fourth line. Nosek, AJ Greer, right? Those cats, Gadjevich. How effective were they? They put them out sometimes against the first line of Edmonton. They didn't get upside down on them. So I think that's it. So if you can't identify players, I think when you look at the style of that team playing, I think that's what you copy. And then you try to adapt players in that and try to get those type of players. Because it's easier, Kyle, to find a guy who's willing to go in on a forecheck than score 35 goals. There are those players out there. There are multiple players out there that would be aggressiveness. So I think when Chief looks at the team next year, what you should replicate, not necessarily the players, but the style of play of the Florida Panthers. I think that's how you win. Yes, you need talent. I get it. Barkov's fantastic. Although Barkov, caught for nothing, wasn't great offensively in the Cup final, but he was great defensively. Yeah. What did Connor do? He scored 1 goal. A lot of it had to do with Alexander Barkov.
Yeah, a lot of it. Well, I think, Dennis, we can leave it there. I think we've laid out our plan for the Leafs in the offseason, but I think it's to a degree it's a consensus plan.
Forget Tree, forget those guys.
Listen, I could squeeze it into my schedule here and there, I think. But I really do feel like we're just speaking of the consensus things. Now it's up to the front office to execute on these plans and for the players to maybe have a slight shift in attitude in the offseason, get a little hungrier and get a little more tired of losing in the ways that they've lost. So once again, my name is Kyle Andrew. I was joined today by the wonderful Dennis Bernstein. You know him from the Fourth Period, Sirius XM NHL Radio. And he will almost certainly be joining us again this offseason to discuss all things blueprints and plans of the Leafs going forward. Join us right here on Toronto Sports Rush, brought to you by the Bet Rivers Network.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.